Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for a new Film Fanatic show. It is January 18th at 9:48. Had a nice nice wintry day yesterday. Probably, I don't know, maybe 5 inches or so. The driving was pretty bad, but it was super pretty out. I went out with some friends last night. Went to a movie, and which is obviously today's topic. And it was right in town at the Colonial Theater. And the roads, if it was a further, if I had to drive farther than I did last night, I don't know if I would have gone. The roads were pretty shitty, especially the back roads. It was pretty icy. The uh, the Colonial Theater, of course, is only like a 7 minute drive from my house, but once I was in town, it was easy. But the roads were pretty bad, so but totally worth it. And I left a little early. We went to the what was it, the 6:15 show. And I went last night to see The Secret Agent, which is just, it's a masterpiece, and it was my second time seeing it. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I did review this movie before. I did see it at the main film center, more or less when it kind of came out. It's been out for a few months, and but this was a totally different experience at a different theater and the whole thing. So I left. It was a 6:15 show last night, Saturday night. Today's Sunday, and I gave myself a little bit of time just in case the roads were bad. And granted, I didn't have to go very far. And the two of the friends that I went with all live right in town, so right in Belfast. So, but I gave myself a little time to like get the car cleaned off with snow and from with the snow, and then go into town. And so it worked out, and I got into town, about 20 minutes, half hour early. So then I decided to drive around for a while in the snow, and it was really beautiful out. It's beautiful out now. All the snow has stuck, so everything is totally, it's got the snow globe vibe. It's really beautiful, and it's not super super cold. It's not windy, and so it's comfortable. So I went into town a little early, and Belfast. Anybody who knows much about Belfast, Maine, or just living in the mid coast here in Maine, it's such a beautiful spot. And the ocean is for where I am right now, the ocean is only it's like a probably less than a 5 minute drive. I can pretty much see the ocean from my house, almost. So that's one of the biggest. I think that's like the most beautiful part of living here in Mid Coast is that you still have a lot of great uh, woods and wilderness, but then you have access, or at least where I live, if you want to see civilization and shop and all of that stuff. I live in a pretty central area, Belfast and then Camden, all very, very cool, and it's all like really, central. So I'm like about 7 minutes from Belfast, and then I'm about 10, 15 minutes from Camden, and then after that is Rockport and Rockland, kind of the bigger towns in the area. So I gave myself a little time, little extra time, and I went into Belfast, and the roads were pretty bad, but it was so beautiful out, and I had some time to kill, so I went down to the park. And in Belfast, there's this really beautiful park, but it's like right on the ocean, and it was snowing, and it was just awesome. So I gave myself some extra time, and and it was coming down. At one point, the snow was coming down pretty hard, and it was definitely sticking. And my truck is really good in the snow, so I don't driving in the snow doesn't really make me too nervous. I generally feel pretty confident with the car, and I'm a pretty cautious driver. So I went to the park after, since I had some time to kill before the movie, and took some photos, and it was really, I don't know, some of the photos came out really cool, and I realized it was kind of not a planned thing, and I realized, wow, I haven't really taken any photos at the ocean while it's snowing, and I was like, this would be cool, and there was nobody really out in the park, so it was all open. So I went and took a handful of photos, and came out, some of them came out pretty cool. So it was beautiful. And then we went to Darby's. We met up at Darby's before. Had some dinner there, which was great. Darby's is like a local pub here in Belfast, which is always really consistent, really really good. They have a pretty interesting, cool menu. I always get the pad thai there. The pad thai, it's a different thing than like if you go to a Thai place, but it's really good. If you like that kind of peanutty sauce vibe, they put a lot of that in it, and they give you like this huge portion. I still have like leftovers, quite a bit of leftovers. So, and my buddy who we were going with, he had free movie passes. So we went to go see, and this was my second time to see The Secret Agent, which I got turned on to probably about a month ago from my good one of my best friends, Sean Russell, who was actually a guest on this channel a few years ago. Big time movie guy. He really got me, and he was one of my key friends that got me really into film, like a deeper, you know, deeper appreciation for directors and films and all of these things. And he had told me about this movie, Secret Agent. He got to see a pretty early screening because he lives in New York City, and he is he's a music composer. He's like an engineer. He does all kinds of work for like commercial work for like jingles, commercials, podcasts, all kinds of stuff. And so he's part of this kind of, it's like a composers union guild. So he gets a lot of good perks because of that, because of his membership. So he gets to basically see movies in advance before like a month or two before they get a theatrical run. So he's like tells me about films like even before they've hit the theaters, that because he's gotten to see them. So which is really cool. I mean, that's a great, awesome perk. And there's a couple of really nice theaters, I guess, where he lives. He lives in Brooklyn. So like one of the coolest things, like he got to see Robert Eggers' Nosferatu about a month or two. It was at least a month, maybe 2 months before its actual release. And he went to see it at like 10 in the morning. And he was the first one who told me about it. And so pretty cool job. That's a pretty sweet. I would dig that. And he had told me about Secret Agent. He got to see that. I think pretty much under the same kind of circumstances. It was an advanced screening, and so I went with some other friends and saw. It's been so awesome being able to go to the movies a lot, and I've been this year 2026 I think is actually going to be an exciting year. I'm actually going to the movies again tonight, which is crazy because I don't. I went from like not really going to the movies, during COVID for obvious reasons, and then it was like really sporadic. And now in 2020, definitely in 2025, I started really going to the movies a lot. Back in the day when people used to go to the theater, I used to go to the movies almost every other weekend. I mean, it was just I go see anything and everything that was coming out. So, and right here in Mid Coast, Maine, we are pretty fortunate. I mean, it's got so many good, amazing attributes about living here in Mid Coast, Maine. It's like, well, sure, if you're a night person, like the negative part of it is sometimes well, we where I live and where we live here in Midcoast, Maine, it really the local economy is really supported by tourism, the tourism industry. So the summertime is usually, the biggest thing for the economy up here. So we have, there's more things going on, more events, and you know, all the businesses do really usually do pretty well, and all those things. And then also the fall with like the leaf peepers, that's a big thing for tourism. But this state really is a like a tourism fueled, I think, economy. So, and then typically in the wintertime, a lot of those things that, all those events or happenings kind of go away. And sometimes that can be a little bit sad or depressing when there isn't as much, things happening. And, being a musician, and I know it's a thing for lots of musicians in this small kind of coastal area that we live in, and myself included, that coastal tourism kind of environment that we live in is also is totally generated, by the tourism industry. So there's, there you have a handful of months where there's a lot of work and a lot of gigs and a lot of music to see, and then things do kind of like slow down to a snail's pace at times, and then it picks up and it's like sporadic. But usually the summer, it's like the time, and so living here can be a little bit weird that way because in the downtime or the off season, sometimes it gets really quiet. But there's still enough things going on, that to keep things fun, I guess, or to to still enjoy it. But it is a radical shift, and I think in some ways for some people it could be like kind of a shocking change from like if you come up to Maine in like June or July, and then you're here in Maine in like January, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? This is a totally different place. But there are things going on. Obviously, well, I've been going to the movies a lot, but there are things going on still, during the winter. But it's kind of a night and day difference. So that takes a little while to get used to. The other thing that's kind of a negative sometimes, like if you want to say go out to eat, past 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock to get dinner or to get food somewhere, that's probably not going to happen. Things really do close down pretty early. Most events as well that happen, even sometimes during the summer, do close and do end early. So sometimes, like if you're a night person or a nightlife kind of person, um, chances are there's not a lot of things that are going to be going on past 9 o'clock, especially 9 o'clock, which is crazy, or 8 o'clock. There's not really any like 24-hour restaurants, so there is negatives, but I think there's more positives that make it even more, that make it even more, of a better thing to live here. Because I think, well, it's just a beautiful place, and there's a lot of talent up here in the arts, and music. I think Maine has some of the greatest restaurants around. Like in my travels, again, it's a big tourist thing, but in my travels, when I did I did quite a bit of traveling the last 2 years, which has been fun, and that mainly through touring. But I like to sample like different restaurants when I'm out of town and micro, beer brewed beers and just different things that we have here and see in comparison. And most of the time, I find that like the quality of the food and drink here in Maine is much better than on any other place that I've gone to. So, we got some amazing restaurants, all kinds of great cuisine. Um, and the other thing is we have some amazing movie theaters. You know, we have access to so many cool movie theaters. We got the Colonial Theater, which I went to last night. We got the Strand Cinema, which is probably pound for pound overall the best theater I think in Maine. And I'm judging that mainly because of some of the movies I've seen there. In particularly, I got to see the 50th anniversary of Jaws there over this past summer, and then last weekend I went with some friends to see, which was also my second time to go into the theater to see the same movie, one battle after another. It's such an amazing theater. We also have Flagship Cinema 7, which is in Thomaston, which I'm actually going tonight to see a movie. Um, so, and then there's another theater in Waterville that I just discovered fairly recently called the Maine Film Center, which is amazing. Such a killer place to see a theater. They tend to show more art house films, kind of like The Secret Agent, which is today's show. There's also Black Bear Cinema, which is a really awesome theater. So, you know, if you're a fan of movies and going to the movies, there are so many great options here. So that's my number one jam. So, and with music, we got Hey Sailor. There's a lot of cool venues here. That again is more on the seasonal level where there are more places that do feature music, but there are some really great venues here. So there's a lot of great things. There's a lot of great things here. Um, that outweigh the problem of like not being able to find food after 8 o'clock, or like again, like I went to a show the other night with a buddy at Hey Sailor, which is so awesome, and I've been really fortunate to play lots of gigs there over the last couple of years. And we went to a show, and it was started at like 7, and it was done by 9 o'clock. And we were sitting there hanging out at the bar. We had some beers, and the last band. I had thought that there was 3 bands, but I made a mistake. It was only 2 bands, and the music was done. It was fun, and looked at my watch, and I'm like, oh fuck, it's 9 o'clock, and this place is closing up. And that's typical. Like that's super weird to me. I never can get used to it. And that was a Friday night, and that is even the case a lot of the time during the summer. So that's really weird. That's not just the main thing. I think it's happened a lot because of COVID and lots of other, you know, reasons. But so it's weird. But anyway, we went to the 6:15 to see the 6:15 showing of The Secret Agent, and it was incredible. I got more out of this second viewing because the story is a very complex. I think at the heart of the story of this movie, The Secret Agent. I think it's essentially like a melodrama. And then I think it's a definite thriller, a modern thriller. If you like thrillers, this is like really something for you. It's also very, very slow. It's a very slow paced movie, but I think ultimately, and it really takes its time, which I really enjoy, and it's a good character study. There are so there's so many layers to this movie. It's essentially about this guy who is this analyst who has this falling out at this university, and he is fired for reasons that we find out. And we also find out that the person who is kind of responsible for him being fired is a pretty nefarious, sinister character who is, possibly responsible for these like mysterious deaths, and possibly his his wife's death. And he goes into hiding, and then he comes back and then realizes that this same person or persons has basically hired these hitmen to track him down and to kill him. And it's basically about that. And it's him trying to reconnect with people in his community, um, his coming to terms his with the death of his wife, trying to find information out about his mother who he has who had passed away and he had lost his like connection with, um, and him trying to kind of wanting to kind of rebuild his life, with coming to terms with like some serious, you know, life situations. But then when he is in the midst of this, he comes to this realization and finds out that there's a bounty on his head, and he's trying to figure this on what to do and to like where he should go. So at the heart of this movie, it's a thriller, but again, there are lots of characters. The thing that's so great is the cast for this film is just absolutely amazing, and we're introduced to so many characters, and it goes heavily into the relationship with his son, his mother, his ties to his family, that dynamic, the community that he is kind of reconnecting with, trying to come to terms with the grief of the loss of his wife. So there's a lot of different aspects of what we're that are weaved into the story. But at its core, I would say it's a thriller. Um, and I the thing that is the coolest thing about this movie. Again, this was the second time I saw it, and and again, it's very. I feel like the story, the way the story is, and kind of the narrative of this movie, is it's a it's kind of a complex story. There's lots of layers. Again, at the heart and core, the heartbeat of this film, or of the story, is essentially like a really good modern thriller. But it's very slow, and I think intentionally, and you have all of these other kind of side stories that we are learning about, all these other relationships, and we're introduced to all these other characters. So I feel like it's like peeling an onion. That's the way I think of this movie because it's so rich, it's so well written. The screenplay, the writing, the acting is just so. I feel like this movie is a work of art. I really do. The thing about this specific situation of getting to see this film the second time was I was able to kind of, I guess, understand and grasp some of the real detailed aspects of the story. I was able to even understand these other kind of side stories that are attached to the main thread of the story more. I was able to kind of understand and follow those things quite a bit more, which was really cool. And seeing how where those connections kind of lie. And again, this film is like it's a slow burn, but there's a certain area of where there is this tension that gets built, and over time it gets built to this really high level to like the second and third act, over where the film is kind of more of this fully realized thriller, and you realize the dangerous nature that the main character is in, and it does such a great job with that build. Even though it's very slow, it takes its time. But when it gets to those places, it is really satisfying and very powerful. The other thing that I love about this movie, and again, all of those side, kind of all the little details in the story, I was able to follow more and to kind of understand uh, on my second time seeing this film, because I think that this is a movie I definitely want to buy this. I definitely want to buy this on Blu-ray. This is one of those movies I think because there's so many layers and because of the complex nature and there's so many characters, I think this is definitely a movie that, upon like seeing it again, in the future and again, I would probably get something new out of it each time. And I love movies like that because that happens to me a lot with films that I really love because I do rewatch movies a lot that movies that I love or that I fall in love with, whether I'd seen them when I was a kid or seen them in the past or new films that I see for the first time, which I've been seeing. I've been watching a lot of new films this past year. I will, without a doubt, go back to revisit them because, and I find myself, depending on what kind of a film it is, I will get something new from it or learn something new about, maybe some aspect in a film that I didn't see before or that I missed. And this is The Secret Agent is definitely a film that's kind of going to be. I really feel like it's going to be that kind of experience because it definitely was last night because it's such a rich film and complex and there's so many layers. I think the coolest thing about this movie is I'm a huge fan of period piece films. Those are I love when a film takes that extra step, or a director takes that extra step, and a film is set in a particular time. Whether it's like in a modern time or some kind of futuristic time, or it could be in a somewhat of a historical context, and then there is that next level of detail of recreating that decade or that world. One of my favorite directors, who I think is a master of doing that, is Robert Eggers. The Witch, Lighthouse, Nosferatu. I mean, he is. I think as far as period piece film directors, he's probably the best guy right now. Just so meticulous about that. But the thing about that, what really piqued my interest about this movie, and the thing that I love the most about this film, is it's a foreign movie and it is set in Brazil and it's set in 1977. And this movie, I think, as far and being that I love period pieces, and then on top of that, my favorite decade is the 70s. To me, this might be the greatest period piece movie I've seen. I mean, you would be. I watch most most of the movies that I watch are from the 70s. Uh, overall, it's my favorite decade, and so I love all things from the 70s. So I'm always going back to that, and you would be hard pressed to find anything that is as close to the way that this movie is created. That other than watching a movie from the actual 70s, you're not going to find anything as immersive as this. I mean, it's the level of detail, the music, the fashion. Even reading about this movie where they actually used cameras that were from that decade to film this movie, which is nuts. Being that with the all of the advancements in technology and things, that they would really do it essentially the hard way. And so all of the scenes were shot with these old cameras from the 70s. So it really is like you're stepping back into a time machine. It's wild. And there's moments like that happens a lot when I watch period piece movies, of where it can look really great and amazing, but you kind of know in back of your mind that, oh, this was shot in 2024 or 2025. Like you always, objectively or subjectively think of that. At least I do. But with watching The Secret Agent, I there were so many times throughout watching this movie uh, where it basically goes away, and I forget completely that this was from 2025.
Powering off.
I really get so lost in the visual aspect of this movie that I'm like, yeah, this is because I watch so many movies from the 70s. I forget everything around that, and I'm like, oh, this is just I'm just watching a thriller from the 70s. I mean, where that whole thing goes away. So if you're a fan of that kind of thing or that aesthetic, it's the best experience you'll have. I think it is next level. It's really inspiring how there's so much detail, attention to detail with replicating. I don't know, the best decade ever. When I got to see Secret Agent for the first time, I had just put out a video on this on Film Fanatic, basically in my uh, top movies of 2025. So I was like, wait, I had put that video out, and I think it was like 2 weeks later that I got to see Secret Agent, and then immediately after I saw the Secret Agent, I was like, damn, I should have waited because this movie is easily one of the best movies I've seen, of recent time. I think it's a masterpiece, and again, we just changed over. We just got into 2026, which is crazy to me. Still, fucking just saying that just is like what. Um, but we're just a few weeks into 2026, a new year, and I think 2025 was a pretty extraordinary year, and with going to see as well twice, one battle after another, which I think is still overall probably for me personally like the best movie I've seen. Was definitely my top pick of 2025, and I got to see that twice in the theater. I've talked about that movie a lot, and so incredible. I can't wait to eventually get it on Blu-ray at some point. I'm a really big Paul Thomas Anderson fan. Other movies that I really really loved. The best horror movie, I did a show on this also, but another movie just in general I thought was one of the best is Weapons. I thought that movie is just awesome across the board. Not only my favorite horror film of last year, but just a really awesome movie. Zach Kreger is a force. Um, yeah, and then I thought another movie, The Long Walk. I thought that movie was extraordinary, incredible film. I got to see that in the theater this last year as well, and then I just got that from Santa Claus on Blu-ray. Extraordinary movie, and then The Secret Agent was another one that I was just like, this is so great. And then another film which I had there's some things about that movie I had a little bit of that gave me a little bit of reservations, but I still think it's an amazing film, Sinners. So pretty extraordinary year. And tonight I'm going to see the new monkey slasher movie, Primate, which I'm really excited about. I'm hoping it's good. I've heard overall very good things about it, but I'm staying away from trailers. I saw one trailer for it. I haven't seen any reviews. I have heard overall really good things, like just generally. So we'll see. I'm excited to see it, and I'll definitely do a show on uh, tomorrow after I have experienced Primate. So that will be something to look forward to. And again, it's something completely different than The Secret Agent. So it will be cool. And again, got to mention the director Keebler. Mendoza, who is the director of The Secret Agent. What a powerhouse of a director. I haven't seen any of his other films. I did see an interview with him fairly recently, and I was kind of blown away by how smart this guy is and just how creative he is. Uh, so many awesome things about this guy. Again, getting back to the '70s vibe, that was a typical, you know, trait of films in the '70s. And one of the reasons I love the '70s so much is movies in the '70s definitely took their time. They didn't feel like, I felt like directors didn't feel like they needed to rush to get the story going. They took their time. It was like a lot of things were about the character development. And I think it goes for Hollywood films, quote unquote normal films, but then also exploitation movies. I think that was a thing. I think, and generally, people took their time to kind of ease into it. People had more patience. The audiences, I think, had a little bit more patience maybe back then. I think people still do, but it's weird. I did, when I saw The Secret Agent last night, and granted, it was, the roads were pretty shit. Pretty much were really shitty, so that was a big factor. But it was my little group of friends that I went with, and then three other people in the entire theater. Crazy. So when I saw one battle after another at the Strand, it was on a Friday night. There was quite a few people there, so that was pretty cool. Um, but so it's weird. It's pretty weird how many people do and don't go to the movies now. Um, and recently they just had um, the Golden Globes just happened, so we're going into the Academy Awards soon. And I don't really have a whole lot of faith or whatever in the award ceremonies, but every now and then a movie definitely comes along, and this is an example where it deserves to get those awards. And uh, when the Golden Globes just happened, the lead actor for The Secret Agent, Wagner Mora, won Best Actor. So that was pretty awesome. And I think it's pretty much coming to a close as far as the theatrical run for The Secret Agent. So if there's still a chance to see it, if we were watching this video and you're curious about this movie, there's still maybe a little bit of time until it is, until it goes to Blu-ray or it gets a physical media release. I don't think it's gotten a physical media release. I think it's still in the theaters because it came out, I don't know, maybe a month ago, but it's been in theaters quite a while, and it's been in all the theaters around here, which is another thing that's so awesome, that a movie like this will get all of this attention, and there's all these opportunities to see this film, which I think is a work of art. So if you get a chance before it leaves the theaters, definitely see this movie in the theater, because it is a such a theatrical experience with the cinematography, the music, the it's such a beautiful movie. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Peace.